one that can see.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. I am John Mgtow. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about prostitution versus dating. And you hear it all the time, the joke that you're going to pay one way or the other. Prostitution, dating, what's the difference? Money's being exchanged one way or the other. And I've often found that people veil their true thoughts and beliefs behind humor and comedy. In other words, they're saying it in jest, they're making a joke about it, but the reality of it is they're saying something that they know is true and that they know we know is true. And when I really started thinking about some of the dates I've been on and reading some people's stories about how they visited escorts, prostitutes, whatever you want to call it, it really kind of dawned on me what a raw deal the dating world really has become. I mean, women have priced themselves so out of the market, and they've inflated their value, and they've inflated their sexual marketplace value. Now, this is something that's been talked about time and time again in the manosphere. This is not anything new. These are simply my thoughts on it, and maybe I'll bring a new insight to the table, maybe not. But I can't help but think of the Weimar Republic after the First World War, where people were bringing a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. I mean, just super inflation. And the thing is that a lot of these women that are marking the value up, they're not supermodel quality or what we would, categorize as the highest caliber and looks and everything else. These are average women, sixes, fives, so on and so forth. I mean, we've all seen it. A lot of bigger women getting in on the act. Now, the thing about dating is, generally, there's the 3-date rule. And, the idea being that if by the 3rd date she's not, moving anywhere with you sexually, you cut your losses. Well, when I added up, and this is being generous with the monetary value on things, because truth is it's going to vary from person to person and may even depend on the girl you take out. But each date is going to cost you about $100 roughly. You figure it's $30, $40, maybe $50 for a meal for two. Take them out to a nice place. Depends on where you go. And then you go to the movie. It's going to be at least $20, maybe more, depending on the time of day, and then depending on whether or not you buy popcorn and everything else, you factor in the amount of gas it takes to go pick her up, take her to dinner, take her to the movies, and then bring her back home. You're looking at roughly $100 per date. 3 dates equals $300, right? Now, the price that I'm hearing quoted is somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 or $250 for an hour. Now, this is based off some statistics from Google or whatever, and it probably varies from town to town, person to person, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just say that's the baseline. $300 for 3 dates, and there's no guarantee of any kind of physical intimacy or anything, or $200 to $250 for an hour and guaranteed, no ifs, ands, or buts. You factor in the time you've got to spend with the girl, the hoops you have to jump through, the risks that you may be taking inherently, because even if the dates end in some sort of physical intimacy, there's always that risk that she'll change her mind and claim that you raped her. And then there's the amateur versus the pro factor. Now, with the pro, you're guaranteed to get physical with her, and on top of that, she has it behooves her to do a good job. She has a clientele to build, and so it's guaranteed, and the quality is also more assured. Whereas with the girl you're taking out on a date, she doesn't really have an incentive to be good at sex. And so even though you may get to that point, she's just as likely to lay there and basically be a starfish, as we say. Now, George Carlin brings up an interesting point about prostitution. We come to the question of, we see the value in it versus, in today's dating world, you have this middleman aspect and the hoops to jump through and the time that it has to be spent for there to possibly be no payoff whatsoever, or the guaranteed thing. So we see the benefits versus the drawbacks. And another thing I'll point out is a lot of people point out the whole issue with prostitution. Well, what about diseases? Well, the thing about diseases is that you take your average run-in-the-mill American girl, and I mean, do you really think she has any less diseases than, say, the prostitute? Now, remember, the prostitute has an incentive to stay clean because it's really going to be bad for business if she ends up catching a disease and passing it on to the clientele. Not to mention, hurts the reputation and everything else. But you figure the average American girl has probably slept with as many, if not more, guys than the average escort has. Well, you say, John, what about the loving relationship? What about the meaningful connection? You can't get that with a prostitute. Well, you're right. You can't. But neither can you with the modern woman. Again, anybody that's familiar with the red pill has squashed these blue pill ideas of romance and relegated them to the world of fantasy. We know the truth about it. So now that we've covered those bases, let's go back to what I was mentioning earlier about George Carlin. George Carlin had a great quote about prostitution. Selling is legal. Sex is legal. So why is selling sex illegal? Why isn't it legal? Why is selling sex not legal? Again, if you want to make the argument, that is made so oftentimes with abortion, my body, my choice. Why does this not apply then in the realm of prostitution? Why is it my body, my choice when it comes to abortion and all of that, but not my body, my choice when it comes to prostitution? Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think in Europe and some places it's actually legal for the woman to sell or to sell services, so to speak, or whatever, but illegal for the man to purchase. I don't know how that works. I mean, if you can sell something legally, but yet it's verboten to buy it legally, then it's kind of a moot point, isn't it? But again, you see the example there where it's legal for the woman, but illegal for the man, thereby controlling male sexuality. Now think about that. There's a push, and maybe always there may have always been a push there, but there's certainly a push to control male sexuality, to control male sexual outlets, to make sure that nobody that is male is partaking in any kind of unsanctioned outlet of their sexuality. Now, women have free reign. In fact, they're praised when they exhibit sexualness and sexuality. But it is of utmost importance to corral and rein men in, and thereby rein their sexuality in as well. Think about how pornography has been dumped on recently, but over the years as well. There was a push not too long ago in Utah to try to make pornography illegal on some level or to some degree. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, again, it is an expression of male sexuality and an outlet for male sexuality that does not involve yoking yourself with the state and does not involve yoking yourself with a woman through vis-a-vis marriage. Same thing with prostitution. It is a male outlet, sexual outlet. So therefore it must be controlled because there is no cash flow exchange in the form of marriage and divorce and alimony and child support. The state has no say in it, so therefore they don't want you doing it. Now, it's kind of not that different from slavery and food. You control the food supply, you control your slaves. You control how much they can grow and how much they can sustain themselves, and you thereby control them. And in fact, it is illegal some places to have a garden for that very reason. Now, here's the thing. Men can and do everything else for themselves. You know, a man goes out, he works, he earns his paycheck, works on his car. There's not really a whole lot that a man needs a woman for. Now, we could argue the whole companionship and all that, but I mean, we're just barking at the moon with that, because we've been over it here time and time again. It's been gone over in the manosphere time and time again, that women, for the most part, are not equipped or capable for true companionship and loyalty. So all that aside, the one thing that a man really cannot do for himself, I guess in some sense he can, but we more or less can do everything else for ourselves except for the sexual aspect part of it. That's something that women have, and of course it's held over us. You know, I mean, how many times have you heard of a woman withholding sex from the husband or boyfriend or whatever as a means of control and power? And the other part of all this is, you know, the honesty factor with prostitution. I mean, you're exchanging money for a good or service. There's none of this clouded feelings or clouded charade going on with, you know, companionship, relationship, meaning. I mean, it's a straight up one for one deal. And as was mentioned earlier, I mean, in the end, that's more or less what dating anymore amounts to anyway. It's just that the prostitutes are the honest ones, right? It's been said, if you want to know who controls you, if you want to know who's in power, look at who you cannot criticize. And it's overwhelming that you cannot criticize women. You cannot criticize their appearance. You cannot criticize their reasoning, the way they think. You cannot criticize anything about women, or you're labeled a misogynist. And again, it goes back to the point of you cannot criticize women's sexuality. They are to be allowed to express it as freely and as often as they like. And then we're supposed to pretend that they are these, you know, pure as the driven snow virgins, and wife them up and forget about their past and not concern ourselves with their past. But yet, male sexuality and the outlet or outlets for male sexuality are controlled. They are sanctioned, almost to the degree of Iran, the level of sanctions on male sexuality. It's almost to the level of early 90s Iraq, the level of sanctions and prohibitions. And it's like I have to get a permission slip from my parents just to do this, that, or the other with a woman. And so we come back to the question of, is prostitution really all that different from dating? No, it's just more honest. So, you know, we run down the pros, the cons, the benefits, and the drawbacks. And it just looks to me like prostitution is not only cheaper, but less of a headache. There's not really any hoops to jump through. There's no middleman. You know, it's a one for one exchange, and then each person goes on about their business, and you don't really have to worry about a fallout so much so as you do with the modern relationship with a modern woman today. And it all goes back to supply and demand. If they control the supply and they make a thing rare or hard to obtain, the demand goes up. And so therefore, when that happens, the easier someone is to control. And the easier someone is to control, the less that they will lash out, the less that they will ask questions, the less that they will do anything or move in any kind of direction to try to change the surroundings and circumstances they find themselves in. And so this has just been my thought on things. Would be interested in hearing some other thoughts from some others, other insights that y'all may have. Until then, you are free to do as you're told. This has been the Days of Thunder. I am John Nada.